Alright, today we're going to move the screen on an EZ-3 HD from the handlebar mount to the front mount between the pedals on the bike. So when we're all done, it's going to end up here on the front of the bike. We're going to start off just by removing the zip ties on the cable and taking the mount off of the screen. The pieces that we're going to use for the new installation are two extension cables here, which are going to be plugged in together to connect the button back to the handlebars, and a new mount here in case the mount that you've got on the handlebars has been trimmed down short. You can see how there's multiple holes in the band and the band gets cut to fit. You probably don't even need the new one, but just in case you have a new one to put on. So we're just going to cut the zip ties here that connect the screen to the 4-to-1 accessory cable. So we're following the cable out of the back of the screen here down along the handlebars, and we're removing it all the way back to its 5-pin green plug. These plugs, if they're a little stiff, you can heat them up using a hair dryer, a heat gun, or very carefully with the flame of a lighter held far enough away that the flame doesn't touch the plug, just the heat floats up to it. Now we're going to undo the bundle of wire down here to get to the junction box. Here at the junction box, we're going to start unfolding the wires so that we can find where the green wire plugs in, and you can see we're turning it from pointing to the back of the bike to pointing to the front of the bike. If things are real tangled up there and you get super lost, you've got an extra extension cable, so you can just run some extra cable in there. But all we've done here is undo this bundle, so this male 5-pin green plug that connects to the screen, instead of pointing to the back here in the bundle, we've undone it so that we can unfold it, point it to the front of the bike, and get enough length, then we don't have to have another extension. So Ryan and Frank here are going to start putting on some new zip ties. They're going to close that bundle back up, keeping in mind that we'll have the extra 6 inches of cable pointing up here towards the front of the bike. They'll close it back up, and they're just sort of getting themselves ready to move the screen to the front but leave the button in place.
Yeah, snips. Ryan's got to get his zip tie back up there.
Ryan's got the brake cable, the electrical cable for the e-brake shut off. They're just wrangling that in place while they work.
No, we're not going to do these ones because the extension's got to run in there first, so I'm going to plug the extension in.
So the yellow connector 5-pin for the button that controls the screen, the button's going to stay where it is. This green extension cable is going to connect up to that yellow 5-pin to the green 5-pin, and then what we end up with is a very long, this is about 38 inch long piece to extend the screen to the front of the bike so it can connect up to the button to screen connection there. So that'll run down along the bike, and that's what's going to let you operate the screen.
Want me to take the screen off? Or, yeah, we can take that off now. 3mm, I think. Start that. Get them out of the way.
Okay. So now that we've got the extension to connect the button to the screen, we're going to pull the screen off of the bars and get ready to move the mount over to the front of the bike. So the first step here is we're taking the mount into 2 halves by undoing this screw on the side. It's a little countersunk socket head, and once we pull the screw all the way out, the mount will come apart into 2 halves. And so now I've got the screen up here, and we're going to reconfigure the screen on its new mount in a minute. And then you'll see once you've got it apart in two halves, you can get at this other socket head, which holds the band clamp together. And then we can remove this mount. And once we've got the mount all the way apart, got the top piece off, we can undo the band, and you can see here where the band gets cut short so there's no extra sticking out, and that's why we're going to start off with a new band in order to ensure that our whole thing is long enough. So Frank's got our new mount here, and this is fresh out of the box, and we're going to stick it on the front of the bike here and pop the screen right onto it after removing the screen from its old mount. So the new one, we'll take it in half just like the old one, and we'll undo the band just like the old one. When the band's opened up, we've got a little rubber pad inside the band to try to protect the paint on the frame and to try to give it a little bit of a better grip. Unfold the band clamp a bit, and then we'll pop it on the bike and screw everything back together, and we'll be ready to throw the screen on. Inch it back just a little bit. The way we generally set them is right near this little arrow there, but you'll have a little bit of wiggle room to put it where you need it. And you can see now Ryan's going to slip the band through the slot in there and before he tightens everything down. So once you got it slipped through, you fold your extra over. You don't really need to cut the extra off necessarily, as long as it's folded over out of the way. We've got the top piece with the screw in it, and then we got to line the screw up with the hole in the band and that little plastic block and screw it back down. As you tighten this up, it should draw in pretty nicely, and if you've got the rubber on there, it should stick on pretty well. You can see how it's oriented so that the little dome matches the shape of the bike. We've got it sticking straight up, and then we've got the top part of the mount. We put that on and we put its screw back in, and then we're just about set. Once we've got that in, we can take a look at our old mount again, which has got the screen on it still, and we're just going to undo the screws on the screen. And we're going to take the screws all the way out, which will let us bend open the split clamps on the screen in order to pull it off of that mount without having to disassemble the mount anymore, because we got to sort of get it over that leg. And we can kind of like pop it or slide it off without too much trouble. And then on the new one, you'll see how you really have to open the clamp up to get them on. And that's why we take the screws all the way off, to give us a little more space there. Then you get the screws back in. This can be a little difficult to get them started because they're just long enough.
The easiest way I find to do it is if you squeeze the two black pieces together.
Exactly.
Your screws should pretty much line up like that.
Yeah.
Just pop right in.
So you get your stuff so that the screw is not pulling on anything tight at first. There's no, see the screws got some room to move when you start out because you pinch the whole thing together. And then you can tilt it back into position before you tighten it up all the way. And those screws don't need to be insanely tight when you're done. We say less than 1 Newton meter. You know, just tight enough to stay put. You don't really want to crank on them with too much strength. And you see we got the wires coming out the top here. If you got the wires coming out the bottom, then your screen's gonna be upside down. So you got the wires coming out the top, and then we're gonna finish running the cables. Ryan's got your extension cable, the 5-pin green, which is going to hook up to the 5-pin yellow here, and then out of the junction box, that 5-pin green that goes to the 4-to-1 in the controller is going to hook up to the 5-pin green on the screen. Hopefully that makes sense. Button is yellow. Button is yellow on the far end, but the extension for the button is green, so we don't want to get those mixed up. And we're just going to lay the cables against the frame, trying to keep them neat. This is not really an exact art. We just want to make sure there's enough slack for the handlebars to turn, and that we're not pinching any of the mechanical cables or deforming any mechanical housings, and that the cables are all out of the way and looking nice. So you're just bundling everything up there, and then we'll be able to plug it back in and see how things are.
You want to run it on the top or the bottom? What would you prefer?
I think we might be able to go through the bottom if we've got enough length to keep the cables together.
Yeah.
So that they all match. So now he's got the extension cable connecting the button, and he's going to the yellow there.
Now go behind the thing.
You gotta watch out for the cables too. You don't want to pinch them. Did you do something with the extension?
Maybe we should go behind it. Sorry, we did that wrong again. Go behind the so that way it doesn't touch the cable.
So Frank's routed the extension cable for the button down behind the derailleur housing for the front derailleur instead of next to the cable for the front derailleur, and then he's tucked the upper end of the cable down behind the mount to keep everything out of the way, and that way when he secures it to the frame, nothing's going to be rubbing, cause any problems. And now we're going to
This is where
hook
the
back
third.
up to original. Yeah, so this is where you could use the third extension if you needed it, or if you've got enough length, you could plug it straight in. This is connection between the screen itself and the 4-to-1 junction box.
It actually fits without
Down
the other
here.
extension.
Now that he's got that in, and secure everything down, and you can see we've got enough slack in the cables here to secure the cables onto the side of the mount, and then everything will be out of the way. All the cables are bundled next to one another. There's enough room at the suspension linkage for the cables to move with the frame, and nothing is too tight.
Perfect.
All right, now that we're set, you can see we've got the screen mounted up front, and we've got the button in its original location here on the back. The handlebars not moved at all, and the screen up front. Cables coming down from the button through 2 extensions down along the frame, around the bottom bracket, and up to the screen. And the screen's connection is coming down along the bottom bracket back to the junction box on the 4-to-1, and you're able to control the screen from the button here just fine. You can see the assist level changing up front, and I can turn it off and on again. So there you go. Thank you very much.